Red flag is when your workplace says that we're a family. Family dynamics can be kind of toxic a lot of the time.
I'm guessing your parents divorced.
This is deeply personal, Shiv.
This is great. I like
No,
it. So I had no memory of them together.
Me either.
Right? Just wiped from the brain. We have no idea how I got here.
It was a miracle.
Right?
Melanie Stiles, Vice President of Business Operations at Birchstone Residential, and her daughter Sara, Director of Strategic Marketing at Hiley, share how their paths have intertwined in multifamily. From watching her mom shop apartments at age 6 to becoming an industry leader herself, Sara learned that success isn't about having all the answers. It's about moving forward, even when you're just figuring it out. Together, this mother-daughter duo reveals how family bonds can shape business dynamics and decision-making in an industry where relationships matter most.
I think it took many years into my 20s to realize
What were the emotions around?
not all of them were mine.
Right now, our number one goal is to work through the process, the problem, and get to a solution. So calm down.
I was almost even worried about using this gift of empathy as a means to transaction and to money. A lot of us are just pretending, we're all just faking it until we make it, which is a great plan.
Just keep swimming.
Just keep swimming. Just literally, a lot of people are.
I'm gonna ask a harder question.
Love that.
How are you guys similar? Well, Melanie, Sara, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So where I want to start today, and where we normally start, Melanie, what was your childhood like? What was 5-year-old Melanie like?
This is incredible.
That was so incredible. Well, I think that she thought that she knew everything still. She's very close to personality. Just trying to fit in and figure out who am I, and am I good enough for the people around me, or just trying to figure that out. And I don't think until probably high school was I real comfortable in who I am. And you don't need a giant circle of friends. You just need a few good ones. And learned that in high school, and had a variety of friends. And I think it was because I didn't really work to be a particular person, just kind of let the river float me down.
Were you really in your head as a kid?
I think so. Yeah, for sure. I do. My dad was in construction apartments, which is interesting because
Is a developer or what?
yeah, he would build them like a superintendent.
Okay.
Years later, when I was with Milestone Management and Highmark and Walden, we owned several of the properties he built, and so it was very interesting. We lived in one that was built under his own company as a developer, and is the only one that he built as his own developer. And so that was really interesting to see that. I wasn't searching to be in this business or find those
You just kind of
connections.
fell into it.
Yeah.
So what about your mom?
She retired from American Airlines. And she
As a flight attendant or a
no
pilot?
Pilot. No. If you met her, no. Very, reservations,
Okay.
cargo, the executive branch. She was also, little known fact, a part of the team that when there'd be an incident or a crash, the response team that would go, which, looking back, it's traumatic, I'm sure.
She'd go to the crash site and
Yeah, deal with family, deal with, the cleanup, all of that. And, God, that's a lot to walk into and burden yourself with. I would probably call it selfless because the impact it's going to make to you. But she retired. She's a hobby photographer, does photography and crafts and watches dogs and enjoying retirement.
So do you know a lot about Melanie's upbringing, Sara?
I know a good amount. None of that is surprising. I would say that the most of what I'm most familiar with is probably like teenage years, late adolescence to teenage years.
Late adolescence to teenage years.
Yep.
Okay. Do you remember a lot of your childhood before that? Like,
Yeah, they're definitely
where did you grow up?
well, that's debatable among a lot of
That's a
people.
great question.
I insert memories that weren't actually true. I say I went to this high school, but I only visited it. Uh, so yeah, I do remember. You know, my father's parents lived in the country in Oklahoma. My mother's parents lived in Charlotte. And so summers at both of those hold, a ton of memories. Oklahoma, uh, definitely, although I visited and lived there shortly. I'm not from there, which a lot of people say, but
What do
but
you
great.
other people say?
Because I went to high school there, like, "Oh, you're from Oklahoma." I lived there 3 years, but, I mean, the sum of all that time, prior to that, in the summers where, you just walk down to the Witch's Bridge and hope, pray that, a wolf, doesn't jump out at you because that's the scary stories that were told to you.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, great memories. I still go back there in my dreams. It's very like embedded.
So you would shuffle between the two.
Yeah, it's just depending on I guess whatever my mother had going on. Of which grandmother I would hang out with during the summer. Um, completely different experiences, 100%.
Really?
100.
There's what way?
Well, on my mother's side, deeply religious upbringing, and former Catholic church. So, but left it, but still very religious. So, I would get a lot of you know reading of the Bible, and there's some Christian singers I used to know, and was like, oh, I love Patty something, and it's just wild west. Many uncles, many aunts, 200
Not really.
cousins. No. Well, yeah, there might be a little Baptist something here or there, but not not a driving motivator of their days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing your parents divorced.
Yes.
Okay. How old were you in that?
I was very young, maybe 4.
4. So you don't really
A
remember.
year or so. I have faint memories of them together, but the majority is of them not.
What was the actual how frequently would you be traveling? Was it like every other week? Was it every other month, or what was that?
During the summers?
Oh, so it was only during the summer.
During the summers, yeah.
Where did you live the whole year with your?
Yeah, here in Dallas Fort Worth Metroplex, mainly always around the airport. Seems like the south side, north side, HEB. I was born in Irving, Texas. Always around there. Yeah, we live in Grapevine now, so still next to the airport,
Yeah.
but always in Dallas Fort Worth.
So in school, were you like a quiet kid, or were you like really outgoing, or what were you like? I'm really curious.
Um, I don't know that I'd say I was quiet. Um, I also don't know that I'd say I was outgoing. Just trying to make it through, with the exception of high school, where I really just ran rampant. It just was very definition of a teenager in high school, and but before that, you know, I don't think I was either. I was, again, just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
You know what this is all about.
Yeah. So what changed then when you got into high school?
I don't know. I think it's just personal development.
Yeah.
And, the more years you're on the earth, you discover more about yourself and you learn from experiences. And I think each school, I did go to a couple of different schools, from like junior high, middle school through high school graduation. And I think you kind of assess and readjust each one you go into of like, eh, that's kind of dull, kind of boring.
Why'd you go to so many schools?
Well, I lived with my mother, and then around junior high, I lived with my father, and he lived in Georgia, Alpharetta, Roswell, which is suburbs of Atlanta. So attended school there, and there was a fire. Our place burnt down, and so at that time made a move back to his hometown, so which is Oklahoma, which then took me to Oklahoma. So through those circumstances, I never said, "Boy, I'd love to go to this small town. I'd love to live in a small town, go to a small school." And I'm, used to graduating classes and class sizes of, 3, 4, 500 people, in big cities. What is that? Class A? No. A ball?
Like 6A, 5A.
Yeah.
So she may have gone to Euless Trinity, which is 6A.
Yeah,
huge
big
school.
school.
Yeah.
What is 6A?
It's the biggest division in Texas high school. So your school,
We go by sports a lot here in Texas.
Yeah.
Like, how big is the school? What's the football team?
yeah. So depending on the size of the school, you compete in different divisions.
I see.
So big school.
Okay.
I don't even know what this Oklahoma school was, a 1A or a 2A. I don't know how small that gets, but
Yeah.
super small.
Okay.
But the best. Like, I'm so glad that I had the experiences of these large, feeder schools into 6A, and um uh down to, you know, very small graduating class. I don't maybe 75-ish.
Kids.
Yeah. In the graduating class.
Were you
Maybe 100.
like, what if you were to choose like a group that you like belonged to in high school? I guess it only 100 kids, but there were still probably groups of like the
Definitely.
popular kids.
Definitely.
Like, what group were you at?
Still groups. Uh Gosh, that's
That's an awesome
very
question.
self-serving question there. I mean, I would say that I was known.
You were
Um, uh,
the popular group.
I'd say that I was known. Most of my friends, closest friends, were in college. I was always hanging out with the older kids and doing older things.
Oh, while you were in
House.
While you were in high school, your friends were in college. How did you meet them though?
Oh, that's deeply personal, Shiv.
This is great. I like it. I like guess the answer and then she says it out loud. They're doing pretty well over here in my head.
We tell all that business. It's a small town, so you just meet people and you click. And I truly do believe that people are soulmates is a very strong term. People interpret that
Kindred spirits.
kindred spirits, and that the people that you come across in life, at all of these different stages, when there's an instant click or familiarity, um, it was meant to be. And so just, I met a girl, and she was in college, and we just instantly clicked. And that was really kind of my group for a long time. But even with that said, I was still, had plenty of friends in high school, but not super close with those, but known and friends
Yeah.
with all of them.
So I guess Sarah, like knowing what you know about your mom's upbringing, like how would you say your upbringing was like similar or different?
And that's interesting that you didn't ask me if I know a lot about her childhood. Just kidding. I know it all. I knew it. And if she says something I don't know,
That
grounded.
That's so interesting. There are, I would say, quite a few similarities and then quite a few differences. Similar wise, I would say, my parents split up before 4. So I'd say, I think the story I hear is like 6,
Before 4.
yeah, like 6 months, 9 months. So I had no memory of them together.
Me either.
Right? Just wiped from the brain. We have no idea how I got here.
It was a miracle.
Right? So similar in the fact that they broke up very young. I don't have a lot of memory of, life with them together. He was also in the industry. I think that's how they met. I believe he was a maintenance supervisor at the.
I'll go into too much more of that.
We won't go into too much, but cute multifamily baby.
I mean, the generations. This boy, my father being her.
Crazy.
Yes. However, I did not really move around too much. So we We moved to Grapevine area when was in like the first grade. And then I stayed with the same group of kids all the way up till graduation. So not really a lot of changing around schools, but definitely, when you get to middle school, that's a whole jump. When you get from middle school to high school, that's a whole jump. So navigating those a little differently because it wasn't like I was going into a new school and I was the new face ever. But I did transition into different, periods of life with my same group of friends, which, you get to a new place, same group of people, everybody acts different. So that was, I would say, probably a little different because when she would go to a new place, she wouldn't really know anyone. So um, I would also say, you asked if she was in her head a lot as a kid. My answer is definitely
For you.
yes. Oh, you would know yes.
I concur.
I would say I was like very sensitive. I'm still pretty sensitive. Um, but I think I was so overwhelmed with all the emotions around me. And I think it took many years into my 20s to
The
realize.
emotions around you.
I think it took me a while to realize not all of them were mine. So I think, when you're like 5 or 6, you don't understand that all like the big emotions inside of you. You may, be feeling somebody else's pain, or you may like look at somebody and see that they look sad. And like now I'm thinking about why they may be sad or how I could help them or those sort of weird moments where as a kid, I had no idea why I was doing that. And then as an adult, I realized that that's, empathy. Um, that was a really, I would say, hard thing for me to navigate growing up is what is my emotion? What is worth the energy to give this strong emotion? Do I sit here and do I feel it? Is it even mine to feel? Feel like that in itself was a big learning curve as I grew up. So
How have you seen Sarah like evolve over like the years?
Oh, wow. Can confirm everything she just said. She's evolved into just the best human that there is. Balancing um, being a naturally empathetic person, balancing that has been um, quite a journey because you have to, figure out like it's good to have empathy. It's good to have those emotions, but you have to be able to establish, like she said, the difference in hers and those around that are impacting her. And being highly sensitive, can get a bad rap of, she's so sensitive. Like who, like we're gonna have a bad day because XYZ happened. Um, and that again, back to something I said earlier that each experience, teaches you and you develop, every day, every year. Watching it, and I've learned a ton from her. And I, used to be very, very black and white, and don't let your emotions get to you. Like, get it together.
You guys don't share that. You don't share. You're not. How would you describe yourself as empathetic?
if we look at it in terms of the zodiac, she is a Sagittarius,
Raised by a Scorpio.
raised by a Scorpio.
And
So
what is
just very like fiery.
Diary. Okay.
Yeah, I think fire is the best word I use. It's a fire sign. And then I'm on the cusp of Gemini and Cancer. But growing up, we really, like, if you read a Cancer, like, they're very emotional. So growing up, we were like, oh, Cancer to a T. Like, drop of a pen, I could cry. And so just even those two, anybody who's listening who knows the zodiac, like, butting heads a lot, especially in terms of like emotion and how to process emotions.
I'm gonna ask a harder question.
Love that.
Do you think Melanie is actually as emotional as you, but
Absolutely.
she puts on a harder front?
Absolutely. And I don't even know if it's a front necessarily. I would say that to answer completely honestly, um, I would say that my mom probably has a stronger relationship with herself than I do. And maybe that's, I'm only in my 20s right now. So I feel like a lot of what she probably saw me process out loud or, in my head, but it's like making it way its way out here. I feel like she was probably able to process that with herself. And whether or not like that's okay or healthy or that sort of thing, I hope that that's going well, her processing. But I think that she feels the emotions in her own way. I just might not see them in the way she sees mine.
Mm.
Because when I look back at all the advice I've been given over the many years and the many tears and all the things, she always had a point. Like she was always pretty spot on how to deal with things and how to confront those tough emotions or tough situations. And in the moment, it's never good to hear when you're crying, like, this isn't something to cry about. And I think the way that she's delivered that information has definitely evolved. And I think now she knows how to get that advice to reach me better. Um, but she always had a point. And so I don't know. I think she processes her emotions. I think I just don't see it. I think, people out here don't see it. But I feel like she has a very good relationship with herself where she quietly kind of reflects and processes that on her own.
So do you like process it? You process internally
all the time.
all the time.
Yeah.
Do you write or you just like process it?
Oh, you're gonna get me in trouble.
No, because
She
I'm
wants me
actually
to journal, and I didn't don't.
Go-
Yeah.
Because I think, I mean, I think I process my emotions somewhere maybe more to you,
Yeah.
where like for me, it's easier to like talk about it because then it like helps clarify in my mind, like how I'm feeling and like
Mhm.
what I'm thinking. But I know like so many people, including my, Kendrick, my co-founder, who's much more of like an internal processor
Mhm.
who like really just needs to be by himself or just like work through things on his own.
Yep.
And it's like interesting because like it doesn't mean I'm more empathetic or emotional than he is. It's just the way we process. And that's why I kind of asked that question because I was curious.
100%. And I think a part of, maturing, your personal growth and development and professional growth and development is getting to a point of understanding that everyone does process differently. I think that's been the biggest kind of bucket and chapter of growth for me over the last, 10 years. Sarah taught me that. And, the one thing that I learned not to say to somebody who is having a moment is to calm down. Never works. In fact, it's the opposite reaction. But to me, it's just like, why can't you just,
It's the logical next step is to calm down.
yeah, I mean,
Right.
it's very methodical process to this.
Because you're more like there's a problem and you're trying to solve it. But that
Yes.
doesn't, I've learned because I'm also in that way like you, when somebody's like coming to me, I'm like, okay, like let me identify the problem and let me try to solve it. But
Game mode.
it's like not what they want, I think, in the moment.
Yeah.
Right. They want you to be more empathetic and hear them out and
Yeah.
let them process. And
Not off solution
Not off
every
your
time,
solution.
which is difficult because we can freak out about whatever's going on later. Right now, our number one goal is to work through the process, the problem, and get to the solution. So calm down.
And I like to
Works a little bit.
like in a situation like that, I've just started asking people, do you want my advice or do you just want me to hear you right now? Like, do you just want to rant, let it out? And then we're on the same page. I'm like, I have a lot of good advice if you want to hear it. But, if that's not what they're open to and that's just going to make things worse, I just like to set the scene at the beginning. Like, what can I give you out of this conversation?
That's hard for me. I still am going to be like, here's step one and step two. We've just got it's super hard for me,
yeah.
but I try.
I feel like I don't know if a lot of people know this about you, but I know it about you because we've had conversations in the past. I feel like you're a pretty introspective person. When did this like start?
I think forever. I just really I have always been like that, and I think at the core, all of us are have those characteristics at the core, and they don't really change. You just begin to recognize them, begin to understand them. If she had never come along, I would still be that fiery Sagittarius that will just tell you the solution and not have any concerns about how you process. Um, and so I think I've always been that way, for sure.
Do you have siblings?
Yes, I have an older brother and a younger half brother. So kind of.
And did you grow up with all of them?
No, not really.
No.
Yes, with my my older brother Chris, you know, while living with my mother up until the point that I moved to Atlanta. Uh, I lived with him and all of his. He was definitely in the known group of at school, and all of his bros, coming to the house, was fun, and then after that, I really don't recall a lot of interactions with anyone. I lived by myself in high school, um, so very independent.
You lived by yourself.
Yeah, she likes to skip in Oklahoma.
Like,
When she's in Oklahoma.
yeah. So when we moved back, there's fire, da da da. But there's still work to be done. So my father had to go to wherever the next job was, but I stayed and lived in my own place. Now there relatives around. I wasn't like running the streets. Yeah. But that's just so when I look back, I'm very not around siblings. Really after once high school began, it was just myself.
Do you think if you had Sarah, like if you grew up in Sarah's upbringing, would your emotional, would you be different with your emotions?
I don't think so.
No,
Because I
I
think,
think it's like like a nature thing.
yeah, I think that you were born with certain abilities, and that core part of her just natural sensitive self and empathetic self is just part of her. The nurture or what you're around will shape you. But I think to the core, you're still that. And I said, I've said before, living in that small town and the opportunities that were available to folks at the time, were limited. Choices do change your path. And I think I've said to Sarah, like, one bad mistake, um, one poor decision in high school could have reshaped everything. I could still be there. I wouldn't have met Sarah's father if I made just one misstep in high school. And so your journey is going to be what it is, but I think your actual true self doesn't really change. It's how you deal with the circumstances that you've come across, you've been put in, or you put yourself in, or other people have put you in.
How are you guys similar?
Hmm.
Hmm.
Interesting question. A lot of people say we're really similar. So I'm trying to think.
I don't see it.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't see it.
I don't.
Apparently, we have a lot of the same mannerisms. Obviously, you look a little alike. I do resemble her. I work in multifamily, so does she.
You're real smart.
Yeah, that's true. I think I have like one or two IQ points higher than her. We're still looking for the
Debatable. This is debatable.
what?
We can't be.
How are we similar? We're both kind of like goofy, I want to say, which is really interesting how I'm about to phrase the next part. But I want to say that we don't always take life too seriously, which is a weird sentence for me to say when I think about her, just core who she is, because she takes life very seriously. Um, at least, like growing up, there was no question ever about whether or not I was going to go to college. And it's not like she was like, you're going to go to college and be a doctor. It was never that sort of pressure. But there was always the expectation that, you're going to get good grades, you're going to graduate high school with good grades, and then you're going to go to college. Um, and I think that's because, like she just said, the opportunities in her town were different than obviously somebody growing up in Grapevine. Um, so I knew my whole life that she was busting her butt to provide an environment in a life that was different than what she grew up in. And so I tried not to take those things for granted. I'm sure at times I did. Um, but so I would say work ethic is very similar because from a very early age, she instilled in me, these things are important for whatever reason they're important. Grades are a number at the end of the day. The grading system is very weird. A honor roll is very weird. B honor roll is very weird. But having, caring about what you're doing each day, putting effort into it, keeping yourself accountable, just the discipline. I think that was what she was trying to instill from elementary, middle school. She also always encouraged me to get into things. One thing that I'll
Get into things, try different things.
correct. So one thing I'll never forget is I was in the 5th grade, and I was going. So how we worked is 5th grade is the end of elementary school, middle school is 6th to 8th, and then high school is 9th to 12th. And at the end of 5th grade, when I was about to transition into the middle school, we were told, I don't know in what fashion, but the middle school has a dance team. And this is the first year ever that we're going to let 6th graders try out for the dance team, because traditionally, all 6th graders, you just take PE. You can't really be in extracurricular. But 7th and 8th grade is where you get to go be in all the sports, the cheer team, the dance team, all the things. For this first time ever, they were going to let 6th graders on the team, probably because they didn't have enough people. And she looked at me, who's never danced in my life, and she was like, "You can keep a beat. You should try that out." So I went and I tried out for the dance team in tennis shoes, having really no idea what I was doing. Made the dance team. And then, that birthed a dance career that I did not ever know I was going to have. I had never been in a dance class before, minus a rec ballet class when you're 4 or whatever. And I ended up dancing throughout middle school. I tried out for the high school dance team. I danced throughout high school. And then my senior year, my coach encouraged me to try out for an officer position. And I was like, "You're crazy. I don't know how to dance." All of this is self-taught. And tried out for officer, made officer, ended up dancing in college, all because she saw this small little talent in me. And she said, "You should go do this and give it a try." And I can't remember what friend of mine I was talking to, or if it was a podcast, or somebody was expressing that they wished their parents had done that more. And it wasn't until I was listening to that person or podcast that I realized she had done that for me. And that had she not said, "You're good at this, you should go do it," dance is a huge part of my identity in my life. And that's how I met so many of my good friends. And it so very easily could have not happened had she not pushed me to do it just a little bit, or identified that talent in me that I didn't see or know. So yeah, I would say, I know your question was about how we're similar. And that was a little bit of a tangent. So that might have been an answer to a different question, but she's always pushed me, I think, my fullest potential.
Did you what was, do you remember this? What were you thinking in your head?
It was the first school opportunity because you don't have organized sports in elementary school, and only until you get to middle or junior high do you get to do that. And I feel like being part of a team would be good. She's only child. We don't want the only child syndrome, which I'm not sure if we've avoided or not. But learn to work with the team and depend on others was important. And it was a small opportunity that even if it didn't go well, we'll move past that because we're about to get into other opportunities. Maybe it's volleyball. She's the best volleyball player on the non-volleyball team. It was
Play ball with me.
it was great. So that's why she doesn't have siblings to argue with and fight over a shirt or whatever it might be. So I wanted her to have a whole bunch of faux sisters to fight with all the way through high school, and it worked out. But that approach didn't always work. She's a fabulous writer, and her poems are amazing. I've stopped, but used to often threat that I was going to publish them, and she's like, "No, it's only for me, not for everyone else." But she does, do those things, and I just want her to explore those hobbies and what might just try it out. Why not? Just see what happens.
I want to talk about how you got into multifamily. It sounds like your dad already worked in the industry. You already had exposure, but how did that even happen?
Well, just floating about life, and after like the morning. No offense, everyone. Like the morning after graduation, like my car was packed and was headed back to Texas. Kind of fluttered about. I was very interested in design. Went to school to for design for a little bit, and then not really having anyone hold me accountable for really anything.
Yeah.
Only myself.
Went to college for design, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I only had to hold myself accountable,
Why?
which
Because your parents were.
not really. I'm a grown up, and again, my mother's a Scorpio. So
Gonna have a
yeah,
full second podcast to go.
yeah.
Zodiac.
So she's raising me. The just matter of factly, and at that point, not really raising me because I've just moved back to Texas after being gone for um 3 or 4 years, and I was like, my brother was dating a girl that was in the business. She's a property manager. And I'm like, I could go and work in those offices. Like, all you gotta do is, kind of be pretty and just like show like not a lot of not a lot to do there, my perspective.
Yeah.
Um, and I wanted a free apartment. And at the time, because again, hey, now I'll have a job where I don't have to do a lot.
Yeah.
And then two, housing. Now I've got a free apartment, and I could tell you it's not like that. There's a lot to it, and just just moved up
Yeah. So you you quit school, or you couldn't finish
because now I got a free apartment.
because now you got a free apartment.
I got a
You're
free
like,
apartment, and yeah, I'm like,
yeah.
this could be a career. Just dumb luck. And it turns out I can be convincing in sales, and I realized there was more to it. The worst, I've said this before, the worst like shopping score I've ever seen was my own, because it was just like nobody told me what to do, and then once I saw it, I was like, oh, there's a whole list of stuff you're supposed to be doing.
Full formula on how to do.
I I
I can do this.
I just needed the okay, and was excelled at it. Just I just have the ability to talk you into stuff.
Did you know that before this? Like, what did you think your strengths were before even
I think I had the ability
you
to
knew?
talk people into stuff.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
so,
Okay.
and or talk them out of stuff.
You were convincing. You knew you were okay.
Yeah, but not like as a recognizable badge. Really, truly, only until much older did I, kind of put labels to that and go, well, that was a skill I've been using for a long time and just didn't put that together. Um, you know, it's again the longer and the more you kind of think about how people are different, you begin to put your own self and definitions, and realizing there was a common trait, a common denominator, throughout all of these scenarios that, oh, I get it. I could just be convincing. I mean, it's not a bad thing. As long as it's the intent
Hmm.
is good. Um, we talk a lot about actions versus intent, and if you're convincing, my intention is because I want you to have a good apartment.
Yeah.
I know it's good enough for my mother. It's good enough for you.
Yeah.
If it's not, then
Yeah.
look at other areas of operations or the business. But if your intent is good, then I think overall you're a pretty cool person.
Yeah, I think this was one of the challenges I had when I was first starting like my company and my business and doing sales, because I'd never done sales, but I think I in my mind I had this like gimmicky like, oh, sales is like you're just like trying to convince somebody of something. But then I kind of reframed it and I was like, well, like if you believe that your product or service or apartment is going to help people,
Yeah.
then like how is it you're not like you're presenting an opportunity to them that will benefit them in some way.
100%. And I think it's a good segue into action versus intent, that we can all identify on the, the supplier partner side, those salespeople that are just a little too intense, and it doesn't really feel like genuine. That's the best way to put it. Oh, you're on the supplier partner side. I'm outnumbered here.
You're outnumbered.
I'm the only voice.
She's in the middle.
Yeah, say more.
I'm the only voice for operators. I think that's also in life. Like you meet a person, you're like, oh, something's just very disingenuous about this person. Um, and so I think that keeping an eye on intention versus action
Yeah.
and what your motives are important.
And to advocate for the supplier, I mean, obviously, like, I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
And I think, like, if I think about my own business, like the companies that I work with or the software companies that we use, ultimately, like, I want to work with people that I have a good relationship with because it just makes it more fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, their product should be good or their service should be good. And at the same time, I think it's kind of a tricky. I'm curious to know what you think, Sarah, but like, in some ways, it's a tricky balance for the suppliers because, like, at the end of the day, I have a business. Like, facts of the matter is, I have a business, and if I don't sell more products or services, the business dies,
Right.
and that's the reality. So, like, it's kind of like, well, you need to. I can't like not try to sell, but then at the same time, like, you have to like balance like actually building a genuine relationship. So it's really tricky. I don't know. Like, what do you think?
I was gonna say, so when you said,
Because you've been
kind
on
of
both sides, so you,
yeah. So when you said how you felt about like sales feeling kind of gimmicky, um, ever since I started on, because I got started in student housing and then I was on the operator side for a bit, I had always kind of looked over at the supplier side with like bright, shiny eyes. Like, I'm so excited for the day I get to go over there. But I also was very fearful of if I would be good in the sales position, for a very similar reason. I am very sensitive. I care a lot about like my emotions and my relationships, and I really was worried about my relationships turning transactional. I was almost even worried about like using like this gift of empathy as like a means to transaction and to money. Um, so that worried me. I mean, I'm not in sales right now. I'm in marketing. But I think kind of the beauty of it is that it really is, we're in a very human
it's a multifamily.
right? The humans and multifamily. We're in a very human industry. And so I do think kind of what you said, and I think you may have said it, but I just know this from being your daughter, like the relationships are the number one thing in this industry. I grew up with her like I would shop apartments when I was 6 years old with her. So I've like been around it for forever. And I was going to supplier hours with her from like middle school, high school. And those relationships were so um like authentic, watching them form. And really, you're one of the first relationships that I formed in this industry on my own, kind of separate from her. I mean, I know it's still kind of adjacent, but those connections build such a lasting relationship that expand outside of the business, because I know I can like count on you as a person. I know I can call you when I have a problem. I won't bother you after hours, but I know that I have that in you, and it makes it a lot easier to then come to work each day and do business with somebody like you. Or I know you had like Mike Davis on the podcast, somebody like him. And that's like the beauty of multifamily. We really are a family. And so when you find those people that do feel genuine, the sales conversations feel less transactional at that point. Hopefully, if I'm ever in sales, that's what I can lean into, is just the really human part of myself, the human part of my relationships. Because I think that's like our golden nugget that we have here in multifamily, that I don't know how other industries are missing it so much, or if they are, but we just feel so different from any other industry and business. And I always want to attribute it to that, the people and the relationships and the humanity of it. So yeah.
That was one of my big like learnings very early in the industry.
I was going to say that. I was going to bring that up about you.
You want to?
Well, when we first met years ago, I don't even know how many years ago, like you were just starting this, brainchild. And I remember you going, this industry, it is,
Oh yeah.
it like it is truly about relationships. And I mean, we had a long conversation about that, but I could tell you were genuinely, your mind was like blown that you're like, how do I get into yeah, it's like trying to get into this family. Um, and they've been in it for, 30 years, and there's legacy members, born into it. And that was a great conversation,
That was
but
a
you were
good conversation.
genuinely mind blown.
But what I've also learned, I think this like starting this podcast is really also like just enhanced like my understanding of that.
Yeah.
Right. And I think what's cool about it too is like relationships with like suppliers and operators are great because it's fun and it's nice. But in some ways, I also think it's just better for business too. Right. Like if I care about you or if I care about another PMC because I know the person,
Yeah.
like I care about solving a problem.
Yeah.
Right. I care if they're like going through things versus like if it's really high level and it's transactional, then the product or the quality or the service is also way worse. And I'm sure, Melanie, you've been in the industry for a while. Like you probably have seen that with different vendors. Is that true? You've seen that with different vendors, like the vendors that are more transactional. Is the product experience worse than or no?
Yeah,
It is?
it is. And, I think it's just because you're, what you've got into that relationship. Um, I have, friends that are on the supplier side that started out as, my rep or my salesperson. And it's just you're more emotionally and invested, both parties, when you have that connection and you feel that it's genuine, and something going wrong with a product or a launch or rollout, with somebody who's transactional, um, versus someone that know genuinely has your best interest, has a different ring to it. It just feels like, well, that went wrong. I'm just the number. Whereas I know that this other person is not going to rest until they figure out like how it went wrong, how we can solve it, and is like truly a partner. So it's just it's different vibe.
Because there's a personal relationship. Like if I was working for a company and I knew the CEO well or the marketing leader well, like
Right.
if she's texting me if there's an issue, like now I'm like, oh shit, I don't want to look bad, right?
Right.
I care about this relationship. I don't want them to. So you're just like way more invested.
100.
I guess on the flip side, though, if I were to play devil's advocate, the risk of this is that operators will choose companies because of their personal relationship, but it may not be the best product. How do you think about that?
I mean, that's definitely true. That can happen. But I think also you've got the dynamics of that operator, of the person on this side of what's best for the company. Are we choosing best in class for this product, or are we looking for an all-in solution? And how does it fit in our environment? You know, I have plenty of friends where on the supplier side, where I'm like, that product's just not for us. But love you, babe. And let's go have a happy hour, but that product's not for us. And just being honest, and I, also help evaluate products. And even though I'm not the client, and say it's not for me, and I'll tell you why. And if it ever gets to cross to this line, let's reevaluate. And I think that you're doing your ownership or your investors a disservice if you are only making decisions based on relationships, um, because it's not going to work 100% of the time.
Totally.
You're gonna get a fail in there.
And I think that's why it's really interesting because I come from like tech and like Silicon Valley and software and all that. And it's like different, right? And like one of the things a lot of like startups talk about and companies that are traditional tech companies is the exact opposite. Like we're not a family, we're a team, right? And I think it's really interesting for me to like see both sides because I believe in both sides. I believe that like if I'm answering honestly, like in my company, we're not a family because I wouldn't fire like my brother, right? I wouldn't like if you're a family, it's different. And at the end of the day, like you said, like you have investors to serve, I have investors to serve, I have customers to serve. And like the person I answer to ultimately is the customer. And like if somebody on the team is not delivering what needs to be delivered for the customer, I can't say, oh, we're a family. Like, so, and there's some balance. So it's really interesting to me to be like, okay, like how do you kind of like manage both perspectives? Does that make sense?
That's super interesting to think about, the team versus family thing. Because I even remember I'm very Gen Z. So if you think back to like 2020, 2021, pandemic hits, people are leaving jobs, they're switching jobs. There was a lot of discourse about just in general, negative work environments and work-life balance and all sorts of stuff. And there was this anecdote that kept being repeated on the internet. Red flag is when when your workplace says that we're a family. Because families have trauma and they keep the trauma safe in the house, and they don't talk about it. Family dynamics can be kind of toxic a lot of the time, and so that was the discourse out at the time that avoid any workplace where it says you're like a family. You don't want that. Um, and I remember reading it like, that's an interesting point. And in a lot of ways, that is correct. I can think of at least one workplace where we had the whole family shtick, and it did feel kind of like a toxic family in some sense. But then I think about what you were just saying about, why you put me on the team. And it's because I didn't, have the family in the house, those siblings in the house to work through that. So there's so many similarities there because you do have to work together. But when you think about a family, there's not really a goal. Your goal is to just be a family. I don't know if there's really a goal there other than to keep the family going, continue to reproduce. But with a team, there's always a goal. We have a game to win. We have to make ourselves better to reach, for dance, we want to score a certain point when we compete. So that's really interesting that you say that you try to incorporate both, because I've always seen it presented as very black and white. We're either a team or we're a family. It can be a family team. Be a teamy family.
I think mm, the I think that also matters where in the life cycle or business cycle that the company's in. When you're in startup mode, or a young company, um, it's you've got to lean more towards team and shared goals to get over the hump, because a young company is most at risk for failure. And so somebody once said that it was Dimitri at Knock. He said, we have a no hurt feelings policy because we've just got to say it because it's what's best for the company. We've got to focus on the success, because you know we don't have the luxury of being in the business for 30 years and have worked through all these kinks and da da da. We can't focus on feelings. Not everything is black and white. Feelings are still involved, and you're still teammates. But depending on where you are in the life cycle, especially right now with the um, economy, you just got to focus on the business objectives and less about promoting culture, promoting family. These things are important because life balance is important. Feeling like you are part of something greater is important, but also the success and livelihood of that organization, that startup, is really first and foremost, because otherwise we don't have anything to go to each day.
Yeah.
So let's, again, maybe that's my Sagittarius self.
I mean, but that's
very
a good
black.
way to put it. There's no, if you don't have a job, if the business fails and you don't have a job, then there's no, like, then your only emotion at that point is panic to deal with. So, like, it's
Don't panic. No.
culture is important. And I agree. Culture is important. Work life balance is important, but you balance that with um,
Success.
success.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, it is hard. I mean, it is hard for sure. Cause like, yeah. But I think what you said makes a lot of sense to me because like there's just so little resources in the beginning, right? Like you've seen how many startups start in the early days being
Yeah.
like one of the first not customer,
Yep.
And oh, by the way, I did one with Dimitri, so that'll
Hillside.
be released soon.
Oh, I can't imagine how deep y'all went. Every time I meet with him, it goes far too deep. Wait, how did we end up here? Yeah.
Mm, But I think that makes sense. Yeah. I think that makes sense. Like you almost like earn the right to, as you go on, to like rebalance in some way.
Correct. And sometimes it happens organically. And I think when you promote too heavily, this is culture or family or, any of those keywords, it's not happening organically. It comes from shared experiences and shared success, well, and shared failure of the common goal, which is getting that company to the winning line or whatever's measured success for the organization. Then you were in the trenches together. You guys did it together, and we didn't worry about feelings. We worried about the success. And here we are, looking back at how great it was.
I want to ask you one question and end with that. I think it's super uncommon for like what I've seen in this industry is there's so many like if you go to anybody's LinkedIn profile, you'll see that they almost with like 90% certainty have started in the industry and have risen through the ranks, right? But there's also many examples of people that started in the industry and like stayed as a leasing agent, stayed as a property manager. Like, why do you think you were not that?
Well, I think a couple of reasons. One, oddly enough, I'm just a natural optimist. Like,
Don't let her lie to you. That's not accurate at all.
it's
No.
totally true. Our first argument, and it's the podcast almost over. We almost made it. Meaning, I'm down to my last $20 to my name. It's okay. I know something's going to happen tomorrow, and it always did. And that's the optimism I'm talking about. Like I will throw in, there's a lot of risk here, stranger danger, all of that. It's different. So there's that. Things will work out is always let it play out is so can I say a lot. But also, so in my work history, you know, I was able to recognize opportunity and didn't panic. So I worked at the same company for 30
25.
25 to 30. Again, just like where I went to high school is debatable how long I worked there. I think it was like 27, 28. Either way. And worked at this organization, for this entire time, with the exception of that first leasing job. I've been within this organization. It was bought and sold different times. So just different people writing the check. When I was a property manager, um, I had and you should always appreciate those who brought you, whether it's positive or negative, because you're learning throughout the journey. But I realized when I was property manager at this really tough property, and like, the RVP had a very different parenting style, just very strong, a lot of cussing, a lot of, don't be an idiot kind of stuff. I'm like, okay, well, I think I'm going to try to find a role in this organization that is not in this particular region or at this property. Um, Lucked into it. And at that time, it was a huge marketing department. It was just a bunch of like two companies kind of merged together, da da da. Da. And there was another merger, another merger. And throughout all of this uncertainty, people just started falling out. And, you know, that was their mistake. I didn't. It will all work out. Trust the process. Trust those around you that you've worked with, and that there's a plan, and get in there and also work for the success of the company. But uncertainty brings about a lot of emotions in people. Um, don't like to work in uncertainty or chaos, but sometimes it is uncertain, sometimes it's chaotic, and great things come out of that. That's the biggest advice that I've given people, is that just, be very careful of cutting ties and running because it's uncertain, or because you liked that last RBP that's no longer here. Your obligation is to your family and to the success of the company. And the other piece of advice I always gave was, be fiercely loyal. And I am, and I was, but don't blindly follow. You should question the process. You should, always look for better ways to do things and smarter ways and more efficient ways. Um, but being fiercely loyal is, a great trait to have. It's not a great trait if it's not balanced, and you just blindly follow um, while you're, coming up to the ranks. Don't try to BS when you don't know something. Um, there is nothing wrong with going, it's a great question. I'm going to get back to you on that. And I think a pivotal moment in your career was when you were on the management side. She's, been exposed to the management side from me for her whole life, and she's like, I don't. It's kind of chaotic. It's a lot. And then one day she goes, I get it. We're all just pretending. They don't.
It was a big wake up call that day. A light bulb went off on my head. It was very soon after I graduated college. And I don't even remember the scenario, but I just remember realizing like a lot of us are just pretending. Like we're all just faking it until we make it, which is a great plan.
Just keep swimming.
Just keep swimming.
Just
Literally, a lot of people are. So as long as you're swimming, halfway decent, you're ahead of the pack. Like you're above average, which in some ways that made me feel a little better because I feel like I've had a lot of imposter syndrome to overcome. And so being able to identify the fact that, some unqualified people are, in charge of companies and making really big decisions. Not to say that about everybody, but some people have snuck their way up.
Like me.
like me. Gosh.
But and that just goes to show you like, charisma and like being in the right room, knowing the right people. That has a lot to do with where you end up as well. But oh no, I almost lost my train of thought. What the heck was I saying?
This happens a lot.
Happened a lot. And that's the first. No.
Real back of her moment of realizing like they don't all know what they're doing, and that's fact.
Yeah.
I don't know what next week's gonna bring. I just got to be methodical about the process, make decisions in the best uh, way that I can, and for the good of the company. But I don't know. I mean, we had a meeting last week just on immigration and the impacts to the company, similar to when COVID happened. Those were experiences that we haven't been through. And, how do we write a playbook and how do we mitigate the impact that this will have? And you got to kind of forecast what would the impact be. I don't know what I'm doing. I have no history in that example to draw from. I just have the ability to like, don't have the imposter syndrome. Everyone's trying to figure it out. And that's daily, whether you're a property manager. I mean, everything, each day is different, whether you're on the supplier side and, um, you know, it- different things impact each piece of our business. And new things happen every day that we've not experienced. So we don't know what we're doing. Um, but just keep going. Um, make good decisions. I feel like I am saying stuff that when you get out of the car for school.
Make a decision, go
danger,
talk to
make-
strangers, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Go out and prosper. But yeah, boy, you trailed off, made me trail off.
I think that was a great segue
Okay.
for closing the show. Thank you. So I feel like this is going to be the first and maybe only mother-daughter
Oh,
episode I do. So you guys have earned that spot.
okay.
We love
Well, there's more out there, I'm sure.
Oh,
There are.
And father sons. I know some of those. But it's a family.
The multifamily family.
multifamily family.
Yeah.
Melanie, Sarah, thank you so much
Thank
for
you so much.
being on the show. This was really fun, honestly, for me, and hopefully it was also fun for you guys.
It is great. It's a different location to where we normally have conversations. Plus,
With different drinks.
yeah, soda pop. But I appreciate it, and I'm excited to see how your program goes. I love what you've been doing.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.